A late autumn afternoon cast a soft gloom over our small town. I, Carol Brown, returned from my shift at the clinic and wearily climbed the stairs to the third floor. My legs ached after a 12-hour day. I had to cover for a sick colleague, and 15 years as a nurse had taught me a lot, but you never really get used to the exhaustion. On the little table in the entryway, I noticed a thick paper envelope with a gold-embossed pattern. Opening it, I couldn't believe my eyes. My younger brother, Justin, was getting married. A pang of something like resentment moved within me. He could have called and given me a heads up. Mum arrived home. My 8-year-old daughter, Alice, came running into the hallway. Her blonde pigtails were a mess, and there was a mark from a marker on her cheek. "Hi, sunshine," I said, bending down as she wrapped her arms around my neck. Her warm hands smelled of candy and orange juice. "How was your day?" I asked, taking off my white nurse's uniform. "Good," Alice bragged. "We got a 10 on our test today. And where are Dad and Roger?" I asked. "Dad hasn't gotten home from work yet," Alice pouted. "He called and said he'd be late. And Roger is in his room with his headphones on, playing that game again. He didn't even help me with my math homework, even though he promised." My 14-year-old son had been cooped up lately, preferring the company of his computer to real conversation. Adolescence is a difficult time. I remembered those years, the economic anxiety of a major recession, the empty shelves, and the feeling that the world was falling apart around me. "What's that?" Alice asked, pointing to the invitation still clutched in my hands. "Uncle Justin is getting married," I replied, heading into the kitchen. With a familiar motion, I took the old porcelain teapot with the tiny blue flowers from the cupboard. "We're going to get ready for the wedding." "Yay!" Alice jumped. "There will be a white dress and cake. Can I wear my new sparkly dress?" "There will be everything," I smiled, pouring tea leaves into the pot. "Dresses, cake, and probably other kids too. Justin is 5 years younger than me, loud, bright, always the center of attention, the complete opposite of me, slow and meticulous. As kids, he was Mum's favorite, and I was Dad's. After Dad's death in '91, a heart attack he couldn't withstand after the country's economic downfall and the loss of all their savings, Mum seemed to shift all her love to my younger brother. "If only you were as active as your brother." "Look how hard he tries, Justin." Even now, those comparisons stung, but I had long ago learned to hide my resentment behind a smile. The kettle on the stove hissed, interrupting my sad thoughts. I automatically made strong tea, one of the few rituals left from my childhood. Our grandmother used to say, "You're not having tea? Where will you get the strength?" That line from a favourite movie always lifted my spirits. "And who is Uncle Justin's bride?" Alice came closer to the table, swinging her legs. "Is she pretty?" I thought, trying to imagine my future relative. "Did you see Wendy last summer at Grandma's birthday party? Remember? Tall, with short blonde hair. She was wearing a blue dress." "Oh," my daughter said without much enthusiasm. "That lady who was on her phone all the time and didn't even want to play cities with us." "That's the one," I nodded. "She's a very successful interior designer. She decorates apartments for rich people. She was probably busy working." "But it was Grandma's birthday," Alice protested. "How can you work on a birthday?" "You're right," I agreed. I had also noticed that Wendy seemed to be just going through the motions. Justin tried to cheer her up, to get her into the conversation, but she only smiled politely without taking her eyes off her phone screen. Mum had whispered to me then, "She has a more expensive phone than my entire apartment." Justin gave it to her. I heard the click of the lock in the entryway. Patrick was home at last. My husband looked tired. His light shirt had a coffee stain on it, and his eyes held a distant expression. "Daddy!" Alice launched herself at his neck. "Uncle Justin is getting married." "He is?" Patrick absent-mindedly stroked our daughter's hair and came into the kitchen. "To whom?" he asked. "To Wendy," I replied, handing him the invitation. "Remember, they met at Mum's birthday party. Tall, blonde." My husband froze with the envelope in his hand. I thought he had gone pale and a sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead, but a second later he smiled. "Oh yes, I remember," Well, good for my little brother. He's finally settling down. How old is he? 36, almost 37, I corrected him, serving the tea. The wedding is in 3 weeks. You'll have to take a few days off. The ceremony is out of town, at a fancy hotel. We'll have to stay overnight. Let's see, Patrick replied hesitantly, opening the refrigerator. I have a big project at work now. I don't know if I'll be able to get away completely. But it's my brother's wedding. I felt a surge of irritation. Can't you really ask for a couple of days off? Dad, you have to go, Alice chimed in, supporting me. There will be cake and lots of candy. Patrick softened. Okay, fine. I'll try to work something out. I sighed with relief. Lately, Patrick had been staying late at work, citing a new project at his construction company. We barely spent any time together, and when he was home, he would quickly fall asleep in front of the TV. 15 years of marriage is a long time. The passions had cooled, but I still loved him. The next 2 weeks flew by in a pre-wedding whirlwind. Justin asked for my help with the organisation. You have such great taste, little sister, he said, and I agreed. Alice and I chose flowers for the reception hall, discussed the banquet menu, and made guest lists. Wendy, apparently too busy with her projects, simply agreed to our suggestions without looking up from her phone. Patrick barely participated in the preparations, although Justin insisted he be his best man. You're my best friend, besides being my sister's husband, my brother said at their meetings. Who else but you should be the best man? Why don't you ask someone else? Patrick replied evasively. I'm really swamped at work. It's crazy right now. The job is due at the end of the month. His lack of enthusiasm surprised me. He normally loved helping my brother with anything. They had always gotten along. They often went fishing together, to the gym, or to watch football. But I was too busy to seriously worry about it. One night, returning from another meeting with the florists, I overheard Alice telling Roger, I don't like that lady Wendy. She's weird. You're too little to judge adults, my son replied with typical teenage arrogance. I'm not little, Alice protested. It's just that she has cold eyes and talks to Dad in a strange way. Yesterday, when we went to see the hall at the hotel, she kept looking at him, and he kept turning away. My heart skipped a beat, but I pushed those unnecessary thoughts away. Kids tend to make things up, especially with their wild imaginations. Alice loved detective stories and often created mysterious plots about people she knew. Once she even decided our neighbour was a spy because she went out to smoke on the balcony at night. On the eve of the wedding, the whole family arrived at the Whispering Pines Lodge. The place was truly luxurious. A 3-story lodge in an aristocratic style, surrounded by ancient pines. Marble columns, a majestic staircase, stained glass windows. Everything exuded wealth. Wow, my brother didn't hold back, Patrick whistled, looking at the fountain in front of the entrance. I wonder how much all this beauty cost. He says Wendy's parents are paying for half, I replied, taking the suitcases from the trunk. They're big-shot business owners from Boston. In the 90s, I couldn't have even dreamed of a wedding like this. I remember how we celebrated my wedding with my parents in a tiny apartment, saving on everything except champagne and salad. Mum cried then, I wanted to give you a splendid wedding, daughter, but there's no money in these times. This is like a fairy tale, Alice exclaimed in awe, looking at the crystal chandeliers in the hotel lobby. Like that princess movie we watched, remember? We were assigned 2 rooms on the 2nd floor, one for Patrick and me, and another for the kids. Roger was thrilled with the independence, and Alice was a little nervous. Can I sleep with you? She asked, when we entered our room with a huge bed and a view of the lake. No, sunshine, I stroked her head. You and your brother will be in the room next door. If you need anything, just call us. We're close. In the evening, there was a rehearsal dinner. Live music played, waiters served champagne and appetizers. The guests, mostly close family and friends, introduced themselves to each other. Justin was glowing with happiness. Wendy, in a strict black dress, looked stunning but distant. It was as if she were playing a part and not very well. Patrick barely left the bar, and I was busy with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Cheryl from Sacramento kept asking about the kids, and Uncle Rex wanted to know if it was true that everything in Washington was now rationed. Like during the Soviet era, he said. I patiently explained to them that we don't live in the capital, but in a small provincial town, and that rationing had been a thing of the past for a long time. In the middle of the party, I noticed that Alice had disappeared. I walked around the hall, looked toward the parking lot, and saw her looking at something near Wendy's car, a brand new white BMW. She had a phone in her hand and, hiding behind the trunk, was recording something. "Alice!" I called out to her. "What are you doing here?" My daughter startled and hid the phone behind her back. "Nothing, Mum. It's just so pretty here. I wanted to take pictures of the cars at dusk." I sighed. Lately, Alice had become interested in photography, taking pictures of everything with an old smartphone we had given her to stay in touch. "Let's go inside. They're serving dessert soon." I took her hand. "Mum," Alice suddenly asked seriously as we were walking back to the hotel door, "can people pretend to love each other?" I was momentarily at a loss for words. Such a grown-up question had taken me by surprise. "Why do you ask?" "It's just that Lady Wendy looks at Uncle Justin differently than you look at Dad. Her eyes don't smile," my daughter explained. "When you and Dad look at each other, even when you're fighting, your eyes are warm. But her eyes are like that doll Grandma gave me, pretty but cold." "You are too observant for your age," I stroked her hair, surprised by her insight. "Adult relationships can be complicated. The important thing is that people are honest with each other." As we returned to the hall, I noticed that Patrick was gone again. Wendy was also gone. The anxiety grew, but I forced myself to stay seated. "He probably went out for a smoke and she went to reapply her makeup," I convinced myself. "It's nothing serious." 15 minutes later, they returned separately, but with the same guilty look. Patrick sat down next to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "Nice party, huh?" he asked, avoiding my gaze. "Yes, wonderful," I said, covering his hand with mine, feeling how cold his fingers were. "Everything's fine?" "Sure," he replied too quickly. "Everything is perfect." I had a hard time sleeping that night. Patrick was lying next to me, his back to the wall, and his steady breathing indicated he was sleeping soundly. I thought about Alice's strange questions, Wendy's cold eyes, my husband's sudden disappearances, and why my inner voice, normally so quiet, was now screaming about some kind of danger. "You're just tired," I convinced myself. "Tomorrow is a big day. You need to get some good sleep." But I couldn't. I stared into the darkness of the hotel room, trying to make out the shapes of a future that could change forever tomorrow. The wedding day morning began with a lot of commotion. Since dawn, the hotel was buzzing with activity. Florists decorated the hall, waiters set the tables, and musicians tuned their instruments. I was helping Justin with the final preparations. My brother was nervous, constantly straightening his tie and checking his pockets. "Did you lose the rings?" he asked, looking at himself in the mirror for the 10th time. I looked too formal. "You look like a movie star groom," I reassured him. "Wendy will love it." When I mentioned the bride, his face changed strangely. For a second, his eyes showed worry, but he quickly smiled. "Yeah, she likes everything to be perfect, like in the movies." Just then, his phone rang. "Hello?" He turned away, but I still heard the tension in his voice. "No, I can't now. Yes, everything will be as we agreed, don't worry." After he hung up, he looked at me guiltily. "It's about work." "On your wedding day?" I was surprised. "Justin, today you are the groom. What job?" "It's just an important client," my brother said with a dismissive gesture. "Well, I need to go change. The ceremony is in an hour." When I returned to the room, I found Patrick in a bad mood. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at a spot on the floor, not even noticing I had entered. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, pulling my dark blue dress with silver embroidery from my closet. I had bought it especially for the wedding, spending almost half my salary on it. He startled. "Nothing. I'm just tired of all this wedding hustle. It will all be over soon." I tried to smile. "Just hang in there a little longer." "Yeah." he said thoughtfully. It will all be over soon. I heard something ominous in those words, but I pushed those bad thoughts away. You're just too imaginative, Carol, I told myself. It's just pre-wedding jitters. The kids were thrilled with the preparations, especially Alice. She twirled in front of the mirror in her new pink dress and little heeled shoes. Mom, look, I look like a princess. She was happy. And Roger looks like a prince, she added. Roger, contrary to his usual behaviour, didn't roll his eyes at his sister's words. In his new suit, he really looked more mature and even handsome, although a little uncomfortable. This tie is choking me, my son complained, pulling at the knot. Hold on, I said, adjusting his collar. Today is a special day, very special. I had no idea just how special it would really be. The ceremony took place in the hotel garden under an arch of white roses. Wendy, in a cream dress with a train, was incredibly beautiful, tall, slender, with a perfect hairstyle and makeup. Next to her, Justin looked a little lost, as if he couldn't believe his luck or was afraid of something. Patrick was nearby, having finally agreed to be the best man. He looked pale, and I noticed his hands trembled slightly as he handed over the rings. Alice walked ahead of the bride, scattering rose petals and beaming with pride. I watched this perfect scene and felt that something was wrong, something fake and incorrect, hidden in all that beauty. During the reception, I noticed Wendy and Patrick exchanging strange glances. It was only for a second, but I caught the moment. My heart tightened, but I kept smiling and congratulating the newlyweds. Don't make a scene, I told myself. Don't ruin my brother's party. Justin gave an emotional toast about love and family values. He spoke beautifully, with tears in his eyes. But he wasn't looking at his wife, but somewhere else. Wendy was constantly checking her phone as if she were waiting for an important message. Mom, Alice tugged on my sleeve. Can I have more cake? Of course, sweetie, I said, stroking her head, but don't get your dress dirty. When Alice ran toward the dessert table, I noticed Patrick had disappeared. Wendy was also gone. The anxiety was building, but I forced myself to stay put. He probably went out for a smoke. She went to touch up her makeup. I convinced myself. It's not a big deal. 15 minutes later, they returned separately, but with the same guilty look on their faces. Patrick sat down next to me and put his hand on my shoulder. Nice party, isn't it? He asked, avoiding my gaze. Yes, wonderful, I said, covering his hand with mine, feeling his cold fingers. Everything's okay? Of course, he replied too quickly. Everything is perfect. Time passed, music played, guests danced and had fun. Justin floated around the hall, accepting congratulations. Wendy smiled, but seemed to be waiting for something. I watched it all, feeling like I was in a strange dream. Around 9 p.m., when the party was in full swing, I noticed that Alice had disappeared again. This time, I was truly scared. The hotel was big, with many hallways and hiding places. A child could easily get lost. Have you seen Alice? I asked Roger, who was with some other teenagers near the drinks table. No, my son shrugged. Maybe in the bathroom. I checked the whole hall, looked in the bathrooms, and searched the garden. Alice was nowhere to be found. The anxiety was growing. I was about to announce a general search when I saw a small figure in a pink dress running down the hallway. Alice! I ran toward my daughter. Where were you? I was so worried. The girl's face was pale, and her eyes were wide with excitement. She was breathing heavily, as if she had been running for a long time. Mom, she whispered, grabbing my hand. Mom, we have to get out of here, right now. What? I knelt down to her level. What's wrong, sweetie? Come with me, but be quiet, Alice tugged at my hand. I have to show you something. Alice, this is not the time for games. It's not a game, she insisted, tears in her eyes. Please, Mom. Something in her voice made me believe her. I followed her, trying to stay in the shadows of the columns. She led me away from the hall toward the exit. Where are we going? I asked in a low voice. To our room. My phone is there. I have to show you a video. What video? Alice stopped and looked at me with a gaze far too adult for an 8-year-old. I saw Dad and Lady Wendy. Her voice trembled. "We're kissing. In the car. I recorded it on the phone." The ground seemed to disappear beneath my feet. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat, and everything started to spin. So that was it. That's why Patrick didn't want to be the best man. That's why Wendy kept looking at her phone. That's why Justin seemed so unhappy. "Are you sure?" My voice sounded strange, as if it belonged to someone else. "Yes, Mum." Alice took the phone, which she had apparently grabbed from the room, out of her pocket. "Look." With trembling hands, I took the smartphone. A video was playing on the screen. The camera was pointed inside the car through the side window. Inside, in the back seat, were two people, a man and a woman. Patrick and Wendy were not just kissing, it was real passion. He was stroking her hair. She was whispering something in his ear. Then they both laughed, and Wendy said a phrase that I could clearly read on her lips. "It will all be okay soon, just hold on a little longer." The same words I had said to Patrick that very morning. I was paralyzed, unable to look away from the screen. The video lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to destroy my world. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, thousands of shared memories. All of it suddenly lost its meaning. "Mum," Alice tugged on my sleeve, bringing me back to reality. "We have to leave here. I don't want Dad to live with that woman." I looked at my daughter, her face frightened, tears in her eyes, and suddenly I felt a surprising calmness. For her, for my 2 children, I had to be strong. I had to make the right decision. "No, sweetie," I said, wiping the tears from her cheeks. "We are not going to run away. We're going to talk to Dad and Wendy right now." "But Mum, listen to me closely." I took her by the shoulders. "What you did was a very brave thing. Many adults are afraid to tell the truth, and you found the courage. I am proud of you, but now I have to handle everything like an adult. You will stay with Roger, and I will go talk to Dad." "Are you going to fight?" Alice asked worriedly. "No," I shook my head. "I'm just going to tell the truth, like you did." I led my daughter back to my son, whispering for him to take care of his sister. Roger, sensing that something was wrong, didn't ask any questions. He just nodded and hugged his sister's shoulders. Then I went to find my husband and my brother's fiancé to change the course of this perfect wedding day. Alice's phone with the video evidence was in my purse, and in my soul, a rage was burning so intensely that I felt no fear or doubt. I found them in the hotel's smoking lounge. They were standing by the window, not touching, but their postures and glances said it all. There was a special intimacy, the kind that only exists between lovers. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. "All 3 of us." Wendy flinched and moved away from Patrick. A flash of panic appeared on her face, but she quickly regained her composure. "Carol, did you need something?" she asked with forced cordiality. "Justin is looking for me for the family photo." "Justin," I repeated, feeling bitterness in my throat. "My poor brother, neither of you deserves him." Patrick took a step forward. "Carol, what's wrong? Why are you saying that?" "Don't pretend." I opened my purse and took out Alice's phone. "I have proof." Their faces changed instantly, from confident and calm to scared and guilty. I played the video. There was no sound, but the image spoke for itself. Patrick and Wendy in the car, their kisses, their hugs, their happy faces. "Where were you?" Patrick began, but I interrupted him. "Alice recorded it last night. Our 8-year-old daughter now knows that her father is a liar and a traitor." Wendy sank onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "We didn't want it to happen like this," she murmured. "It just happened on its own. We met at your mum's birthday party, and something special happened between us." "Special?" I felt tears rise in my throat, but I forced myself to speak calmly. "And you decided to continue with this special thing even when you started dating my brother, even when he proposed to you." "I was going to break off the engagement." Wendy looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "But then Justin's parents helped my dad with his business, and my parents insisted on the wedding. They said I couldn't ruin everything." "And you," I turned to my husband, "you couldn't ruin everything either. 15 years of marriage and 2 children are nothing compared to a new love. Patrick looked devastated, his shoulders slumped, and a frozen despair in his eyes. I tried to fight it, Carol. I really did. He stopped. We decided that after the wedding we would tell you everything. I was going to talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow? I echoed. How noble. We thought it was better not to ruin the wedding, Wendy interjected. So many people, so much money spent. And what about Justin? I grabbed her hand. Does he know? Wendy shook her head. We didn't want to tell him either. I imagined my brother now, so happy and proud, finding out that his wife loves another man, and that this man is his brother-in-law. How vile, how treacherous, I said, feeling a cold fury grow inside me. You not only ruined your families, but also the lives of innocent people, my children, my brother. At that moment, the door opened and Justin appeared in the doorway. His face, flushed with champagne and happiness, suddenly froze. What's going on here? He asked, looking from Wendy to Patrick and then to me. Carol, why are you crying? I hadn't realized that tears were streaming down my cheeks. I quickly wiped them away and tried to smile. Nothing, little brother, I just got a little emotional. But Justin wasn't a fool. He felt the tension. He saw the frightened faces of Patrick and Wendy. Did something happen? He insisted. Tell me. I looked at Wendy, who was petrified like a statue, and at Patrick, who lowered his gaze. Neither of them had the courage to tell the truth. Justin, I took a deep breath. I am so sorry, but you have to see something. I held out the phone with the video open. My brother looked at the screen in confusion, pressed play, and his face slowly changed. First surprise, then disbelief, and finally, a pain so deep that I felt physically ill. What the hell? He couldn't finish the sentence, looking at the screen, then at Wendy, then at Patrick. What is this? When was this recorded? Last night, I replied in a low voice. Alice saw you by chance and recorded the video. Alice? Justin blinked in bewilderment. Your little girl? Yes, I swallowed the lump in my throat. You can't lie to children. They always see the truth. Finally, Wendy regained her voice. Justin, I can explain everything. It was a mistake. We didn't want to— Didn't want what? He interrupted her in a frighteningly calm voice. Didn't you want me to find out? Or did you not want to marry me, pretending you loved me? She hesitated. I thought I could love you. You're a good person, Justin, the best of all the people I know. But the heart wants what it wants. Justin looked at her in silence. Then he turned his gaze to Patrick. And you're not going to say anything. I considered you a friend, a brother. Patrick looked as if he had been punched. He opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. That silence was the last straw. Justin clenched his fists, and for a second, I thought he was going to hit Patrick, but instead he took a deep breath and said, I'm cancelling the wedding right now. What? Wendy exclaimed in horror. You can't! The guests, the gifts, the contracts. My parents will kill me. Your parents? Justin smiled bitterly. Of course, for you that was always the most important thing. What will others say? What will your parents think? And what I feel? He turned to me. Carol, help me. We have to tell the guests the wedding is off. What are we going to say? I asked, unable to believe this was really happening. The truth, Justin said firmly, that the bride loves someone else and that this whole thing was a fraud. Wendy jumped up. You won't do that. You won't humiliate me in front of everyone. And you didn't humiliate me when you were kissing my sister's husband the night before our wedding. Justin's voice trembled with contained emotion. When you pretended to love me and planned to run away with him afterward. Finally, Patrick came out of his daze. Justin, listen, maybe we shouldn't decide something so drastically. We could talk about this tomorrow when everyone is calmer. Justin looked at him with such contempt that Patrick involuntarily took a step back. Tomorrow, Justin repeated. Tomorrow, I would already be married to a woman who loves you, and you would continue to pretend that nothing is wrong. He didn't finish the sentence, simply turned and left the room, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell from the wall. Wendy ran after him. "Justin, wait! Let's talk!" I was left alone with Patrick. We were only a few feet apart, but it felt like there was an abyss between us. "Now what?" he asked in a low voice. "What will happen to us?" "There is no us anymore," I replied. The words came out more easily than I expected. "You made your choice. Now I'll make mine." "The kids," he began. "Are staying with me," I interrupted. "You can see them whenever you want, but we'll live separately." "Carol, please." His eyes filled with tears. "I made a terrible mistake. Can I fix it? Let's try." "No," I shook my head. "There are some things that can't be fixed, Patrick. You didn't just cheat on me. You destroyed what I believed in, our family, our friendship with my brother. I can never trust you again." I turned and left the room, feeling a strange relief, as if a heavy weight I had unknowingly carried for months had suddenly fallen off my shoulders. In the hallway, I ran into Justin. He was standing by the large windows that looked out onto the garden, watching the guests dancing under the bright lights. Wendy was nowhere near him. "Where is she?" I asked, approaching him. "She went to go complain to her parents." Justin smiled, but there was no amusement in his eyes. "Now they'll come and scold me for ruining their precious daughter's reputation." "I'm so sorry." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You don't deserve this." "And you," he looked at me, "you deserve it?" "No one deserves betrayal," I sighed. "But now we'll have to live with it." "What are you going to do?" Justin asked. "I'm taking the kids and going home, and in the morning I'm filing for divorce." I said it calmly, surprised by my own determination. "And you?" "I'm going to tell the guests that the wedding is cancelled, to enjoy themselves, drink and eat. Everything is already paid for," he said. "And then I'll come with you. We can, you know." I hugged my brother. "We'll get through this together." Just then, the kids approached. Roger was holding Alice's hand, and she looked scared and confused. "Mum," she whispered, "did you fight with Dad?" I knelt in front of my daughter. "Yes, sweetie. Dad and I had a big fight, and we're going to live separately for a while." Seeing the video, her lips trembled. "It was my fault." "No," I hugged her tight. "You have nothing to do with this. You're a very brave girl who told the truth. Dad did something wrong and you helped fix it." "And Uncle Justin won't marry Lady Wendy?" Alice asked, looking me in the eye. "No," Justin replied, kneeling down beside us. "You saved me from a big mistake, sweetie. Thank you." Roger, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly asked, "Are we leaving the wedding right now?" "Yes," I replied as I got up. "Go pack your things. We're leaving in half an hour. I'll call a taxi." "What about Dad?" Roger looked confused. "Dad will stay here." I tried to speak calmly. "We'll talk about everything when we get home." I saw the pain in my son's eyes. At his age, he already understood that something irreversible was happening, but he just nodded and led his sister away to pack their things. When the kids were gone, Justin said, "Go with them. Help them get ready. I'll go announce it to the guests." "Are you sure?" I took his hand. "Wouldn't it be better to leave quietly?" "No," Justin straightened up. "I have to tell the truth. Enough with the lies." He kissed me on the cheek and left for the hall. I went to the room to pack our things and begin a new life, without a husband who had betrayed me, but with children who needed me more than ever. In the room, I quickly folded our clothes. My hands moved mechanically, and my mind was blank. It was only when I folded the wedding gift I had so carefully chosen, a leather-bound family album with Justin and Wendy's names engraved on it, that a wave of emotions washed over me. I sat on the bed and burst into tears for the first time on that crazy night, allowing myself to feel the pain of loss. Crying, I didn't hear someone enter the room. It was only when small arms wrapped around my neck that I knew I wasn't alone. "Don't cry, Mummy," Alice whispered. "Roger and I will always be with you. We'll never leave you." I hugged my daughter, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, candy, and orange juice. In that moment, I understood that despite all the pain, I had what truly mattered. My children, my family, and we would make it through. I was sure of it. 6 months later, the winter sun was lazily coming through the windows of our new apartment. We had moved to another neighborhood, closer to Mum's house and away from the memories. The two-bedroom apartment was smaller than our old one, but it had been nicely renovated, and there was a cozy kitchen where the kids and I liked to gather in the evenings to have tea and toast. I placed documents on the table. Tomorrow was the final court hearing for the divorce. Patrick hadn't disputed my demands, half of the assets, child support, and weekend visitation. At least in that, he behaved decently. He and Wendy were no longer in contact. She had gone back to Boston with her parents right after the failed wedding, and we hadn't heard from her since. Justin said that Wendy's father had lost a big contract because of the scandal and that the family business was on the verge of ruin. I didn't feel happy about it, but I didn't feel sad either. Karma exists. "Mom, I'm going to the store," Roger shouted, poking his head into the kitchen. "Do you want me to get you anything?" "Milk, please," I smiled, "and you can get something good for yourself too." My son nodded and disappeared. In these 6 months, he had matured, become more serious and responsible. The divorce had, strangely enough, been good for him. Roger stopped isolating himself. He started helping more around the house and his grades improved. Maybe he felt that he was now the man of the family. Alice was drawing at the table. She had already finished her 3rd album in a month with her endless princesses and wizards. Before, she used to draw our family, Mum, Dad, brother and herself, holding hands in front of a house. Now her drawings had changed. It was me, her and Roger, sometimes Grandma or Uncle Justin. Dad didn't appear in them, and that worried me. "Alice," I called, putting the documents aside, "don't you want to draw Dad? He misses you." My daughter looked up, her blonde eyebrows furrowed. "Why? He doesn't live with us." "But he's still your dad, and he loves you," I said softly. "Then why didn't he come on Sunday?" Alice put down at her pencil. "He promised to take me to the movies, and he didn't come." Patrick had indeed missed the last visit with the kids, saying he had an urgent work matter. Roger had understood, but Alice had been disappointed. She waited for him all day, dressed in a new dress, and that night she cried silently into her pillow. "Dad has a lot of work," I stroked my daughter's head. "I'm sure he'll come next Sunday." "You always defend him," Alice murmured, "even after what he did." The insight of children sometimes scared me. At 8.5, Alice sometimes reasoned like an adult. "I'm not defending him," I sighed. "I just want you to have a good relationship, no matter what. He is your father, and that will never change." Alice didn't answer, simply returning to her drawing. I looked at her with my head tilted, thinking that I had to do everything possible to protect the children from the bitterness that I myself felt. Patrick had betrayed me, but I wouldn't allow the children to lose their father. The phone rang. It was Justin. After that memorable wedding, he had been coming over often, helping us move and playing with the kids. In the evenings, we would sit in the kitchen, drink tea, and talk about life. My brother had become closer to me than ever. "Hey, sis," his voice sounded cheerful. "How are you?" "Fine," I replied, preparing for the hearing tomorrow. "I'll pick you up at 9, Justin said. "And I wanted to suggest something. I have 2 tickets to a concert next Saturday. Do you want to go?" I was surprised. "Since when do you like that music?" "Since my big sister used to make me write down the lyrics when we were kids," Justin laughed. "Remember?" I smiled. "Of course I remember. I was 12 and obsessed. I would make 7-year-old Justin listen to the same songs over and over so he could copy the lyrics from the tape. I imagined myself becoming a great singer. "Okay," I agreed. "Thanks, little brother. I haven't been anywhere in a long time." "Perfect." I could hear the smile in his voice. "Mum can watch the kids. They'll like that. She always spoils them." After the call, I felt a surge of energy. 6 months after the divorce, I had barely gone anywhere except work and the grocery store. I had fallen into the habit of going to bed at 9 p.m. with a book, like an old woman and not a 37-year-old. Roger returned with the groceries, and we started making dinner. I was teaching my son how to make potato fritters, a recipe from our grandmother with apple and onion. Alice hovered nearby, tasting the batter and suggesting we add more sugar. As the fritters sizzled in the pan, the doorbell rang. I turned off the stove and went to open it, drying my hands on my apron as I walked. At the door was Patrick. He had lost weight, grown a beard, and looked strange in a black turtleneck sweater. He had never worn them before. "Hi," he said uncertainly. "Can I come in?" I silently stepped aside, letting him into the apartment. The kids heard their dad's voice and came running into the entryway. "Dad!" Alice launched herself at him. "You came!" "Of course, sweetie." Patrick lifted her into his arms. "I promised, just a little earlier than Sunday." Roger was more reserved. He just nodded to his father, but I could see that he was happy he had come. "We're making potato fritters," Alice said. "Do you want some?" "I'd love some." Patrick smiled and looked at me. "If Mom allows it," he said in a low voice. Alice clapped her hands excitedly. "Mum, can Dad have dinner with us?" I hesitated. Seeing Patrick in our new home was strange, as if the past had invaded the present, but I couldn't say no in front of the children. "Okay," I nodded. "Roger, set the table. Alice, help your brother." The kids ran into the kitchen, and Patrick and I were left in the entryway. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I know this isn't easy for you." "Did you just come for dinner?" I asked, looking into his eyes. "No." Patrick took an envelope from his pocket. "I've signed all the documents. You can give them to the lawyer tomorrow. You don't need to go to court. I completely agree with your conditions." I took the envelope, feeling a strange emptiness. The end. 15 years of marriage officially ending with a simple stroke of a pen. It didn't even seem real. "Thank you," I said dryly. "And thank you for bringing it yourself instead of sending it by courier." "Carol," Patrick took a step toward me, "I wanted to say that I'm so sorry for what happened, for how I treated you, the kids, Justin. It was the biggest mistake of my life." "And Wendy?" I asked, ignoring his apology. "Did you break up?" "Yes." Patrick lowered his gaze. "After that day, she went back to Boston with her parents. She called a couple of times, but I didn't answer." "Why?" I really wanted to know. "You loved her. You destroyed our family for her." "I thought I loved her." Patrick shook his head. "But it was an illusion. When everything came out, when I saw the pain in the eyes of our kids and Justin, I understood the price I paid for a moment of weakness, and it wasn't worth it." His voice held sincere regret, but my heart remained cold. Too late, too much pain. "Dad, everything's ready!" Alice yelled from the kitchen. "The fritters are getting cold, come on!" I nodded toward the kitchen. "The kids are waiting for you." During dinner, Patrick talked about his new job. He had switched to another construction company and was now leading projects in the nearby city. "They're building a big shopping centre with a rooftop cinema," he explained to Roger. "Can you imagine?" "That's so cool," my son admired. "When will it be finished?" "In about a year," Patrick smiled. "I'll definitely take you guys when it's done." "You promise?" Alice looked at her dad hopefully. "I promise, sweetie," Patrick stroked his daughter's head. "And this time, I will keep my word." After dinner, the kids showed their dad the apartment, their rooms, and their new toys, and I cleared the table, trying not to think about how naturally Patrick fit into our life, as if those 6 months of pain and loneliness had never happened. When he was getting ready to leave, the kids clung to him, not wanting to let go. "Stay, Daddy," Alice begged. "We could watch a cartoon together." "Next time, my sunshine." Patrick kissed the top of her head. "I'll come over for the whole day on Sunday and we'll do whatever you want." "You promise?" Alice asked again. "On my honour," Patrick replied seriously. "Dad will never let you down again." I walked him to the door. As he was leaving, he turned around. "Carol, I know I have no right to ask, but could we talk sometime? Just talk." I looked at the person I had once loved, with whom I had shared sunrises and had children, planned a future that had so cruelly betrayed me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt not pain, but exhaustion. "Maybe," I replied, "someday, but not now." He nodded, understanding that this was the most he could hope for. "Good night," Patrick said and left, closing the door firmly. I returned to the children. They were sitting on the couch, quiet and pensive. Dad has changed, Roger said suddenly. He's like a different person. Yes, I nodded. People change. And you'll get back together? Alice asked, hope in her voice. I sat down between the kids and hugged them by the shoulders. No, sweetie, Dad and I won't live together again, but we both love you very much, and we'll always be your parents. That will never change. I want everything to be like it was before. Alice leaned on my shoulder. I wanted that once too, I confessed. But sometimes you have to accept that some things can't be like they were before, even if they can still be good in a different way. And your new job? Roger asked. After the divorce, I left the clinic and started working at a private medical centre. I was no longer a procedural nurse, but an assistant to a family psychologist. I registered patients, handled documentation, and sometimes attended sessions with children. Yes, my new job, I smiled. I like it much more than the clinic. Besides, they pay better, and I'm helping people. And can I be happy because now I have 2 houses? Alice asked thoughtfully. One with you and one with Dad. Of course you can, I kissed her forehead. You can be happy with anything that makes you happy. That night, for the first time in a long time, I had a pleasant dream. It wasn't a nightmare of betrayal or a disturbing vision of an unknown future. I dreamed that I was walking on the seashore, holding my children's hands. We were laughing, throwing little stones into the water, and in my soul there was peace, no pain, no bitterness, just serenity and confidence in tomorrow. In the morning, I woke up with the feeling that I was finally starting to live again, not just existing day by day, but really living, making plans, dreaming, and enjoying the little things. I called Justin and told him that I wanted to go not only to the concert, but also to the theatre next week, and, in general, start going out more. He was happy and suggested we go to the country house over the weekend. Mum's cherry tree was just ready to harvest. We could pick them and make jam as a family. The kids woke up in a good mood. During breakfast, Alice suddenly said, Mum, I've decided I want to be a psychologist like that man you work with to help sad people. That's a great idea, I smiled. You'll be a wonderful psychologist. And can I help people too? Roger asked, but I want to build houses like Dad. Of course, son, I stroked his hand. You can be whatever you want. After breakfast, I got ready and went to the courthouse, not alone, but with Justin, who was waiting for me at the entrance. I had Patrick's documents, but I decided to be present at the official dissolution of the marriage to put an end to it for myself. On the way to the courthouse, Justin told me about his new job. After the wedding scandal, he had quit his job at the bank and opened his own consulting firm. He talked about new clients and expansion plans, and I looked at his lively face and was glad that my brother had not been broken or closed himself off like me. We both endured. 3 years later, large snowflakes swirled outside the window, turning the December night into a true winter fairy tale. I was sitting on the windowsill with a cup of hot tea, watching the neighbourhood kids build a snowman. Among them was my Alice, now 11, with a bright red hat with a pom-pom. Her laughter could be heard even through the closed window. Aren't you cold? Justin asked, coming in with a box of Christmas decorations. Your feet are freezing. No, I smiled, tucking my feet under me. I like to watch the snow. Justin came closer, hugged my shoulders, and also looked out the window. Alice is leading the show, as always, he laughed, seeing my daughter directing the creation of the snowman, telling the other kids where to roll the snowball. She's just like you. I gave him a little nudge. Just as quick. No, that's our dad's genetics. Justin shook his head. Do you remember how he loved to organise Saturday clean-up days? He'd gather all the neighbours and assign tasks. Yes, I remember, I smiled. No one could say no. He had a real talent for convincing people. We fell silent, remembering our father. It had been more than 20 years since his death, but the memory lived on in our hearts, especially at times like this, when the family gathered to prepare for a big celebration. Today, we were decorating the tree in my, now our, new home, a 3-bedroom apartment in a modern building with a view of the park and a spacious balcony. I had bought it a year ago, selling our old apartment with Patrick and getting a small mortgage. Justin helped with the down payment and the remodeling, and 6 months ago he had brought his things so we could live together, a brother and sister supporting each other and 2 kids who needed a complete family. Our mother was surprised at first by this decision, but then she admitted it was a sensible one. "After all, you're family," she said. "Who better than you to take care of each other?" Of course, the neighbours whispered, "A single woman with 2 kids and a single man under the same roof always lead to gossip." But we didn't care. We knew we were doing it for the kids and for ourselves. 2 single people find it easier to face life when they have support. "Is Mum coming for the family celebration?" Justin asked, opening the box of ornaments. "Yes, I sent Roger to get her. I replied. "They're also stopping at the store to buy some food. My son, now a 17-year-old young man, had recently gotten his driver's license and proudly drove Grandma around in the old Volkswagen that Justin had bought for family needs." "Oh, and Patrick," Justin said, taking a crystal ball with a snowy pine tree inside and shaking it in his hands. "He's coming too. He promised to be here by 8. "I know," I nodded, "with Lily and the little one." Patrick had remarried a year ago. His chosen one was a young teacher from the school Roger attended. They met at a parent-teacher conference, and a sudden connection turned into a serious relationship. Now they had a growing son, little Sam, who had just turned 3 months old. Our relationship with Patrick didn't mend overnight. For the first year after the divorce, we only talked about issues related to the kids. He paid child support on time and picked up Alice and Roger on weekends, but between us there was an invisible wall of distance. Everything changed when Roger started having problems at school, teenage rebellion, conflicts with teachers, dropping grades. Typical issues, but I felt like I was losing control of the situation. So I called Patrick, and he took the problem very seriously. Together, we went to talk to the principal and the school psychologist, and then we had a long talk with our son. Together, as parents who, despite the separation, still cared about their children. Little by little, the tension disappeared. We learned to talk without reproach, to solve the kids' problems together, and even to joke sometimes about the past. When Patrick introduced me to Lily, I felt no jealousy, but relief. He was finally moving on without clinging to the past. To my surprise, Lily turned out to be a nice woman, calm and intelligent, nothing like Wendy. She sincerely tried to get along with Roger and Alice, not trying to replace their mother, but simply being a friend. The kids were fond of her, especially Alice, who adored helping with little Sam. "Look," Justin said, approaching the window, "it looks like they finished the snowman." I looked out into the yard. The kids surrounded their creation, an impressive snowman with a scarf tied around its neck and an old bucket on its head. Alice was placing a carrot nose on it and animatedly explaining something to her friends. "She's grown up," I said in a low voice. She was no longer the little girl who was afraid to sleep alone, or the one who had uncovered the treacherous plan at the wedding. Justin put his arms around my shoulders. "Do you remember how she came up to you with the phone? A true little detective." "I remember," I sighed. "Sometimes I think that without her, I would have lived a lie. Maybe I'd still be with Patrick, not suspecting that his heart was taken by someone else." "And would you rather not have known?" Justin asked seriously. "No," I shook my head. "Better a bitter truth than a sweet lie. It's just sometimes strange that a child was the most honest and brave of all of us." Justin nodded in silence. We almost never talked about Wendy. After the failed wedding, she disappeared from our lives as if she had never existed. We only knew that she married a foreigner and moved to Europe. "Well, so be it," I said. "I stopped wishing her ill a long time ago. That woman just became an episode in our lives, albeit a painful one." The front door slammed shut, and a whirlwind of snow, laughter, and excited exclamations burst into the apartment. It was Alice, home from outside. "Mum, Uncle Justin, she yelled, taking off her snow-covered hat. Did you see our snowman? It's the biggest one in the yard. Did you see it? Yes, we saw it, I smiled. A real snow giant. And the Christmas tree? Alice looked around. You didn't start decorating it? We were waiting for you, Commander, Justin winked. We can't do it without your orders. Very funny, Alice scoffed, but her eyes shone with pleasure. She loved it when her uncle joked, calling her Commander. Let's start quick. Grandma will be here soon, and we don't have anything ready yet. We started working as a team. Justin placed the tree in its special stand. I untangled the garlands, and Alice organised the ornaments by colour and size. She had her own system for decorating the tree that we were not to break. Mum, do you remember this ornament? Alice showed me an old glass rooster. Your grandmother bought it? Yes, I said, carefully taking the fragile treasure. She would be almost 100 years old now. She said she bought that rooster right before the war, and it miraculously survived when their house was bombed. Then they would hang it on the tree every year, even when they had no money, and they would make a wish, Justin added. I want to make a wish too. Alice carefully took the rooster. Can I? Of course, sweetie, I stroked her head. Now it's your tradition. Alice closed her eyes, whispered something, and hung the ornament in the most visible spot. Justin and I looked at each other and smiled. How wonderful that family traditions continued no matter what. By 7 o'clock, the tree was completely decorated, and in the kitchen, the soup was simmering and the meatballs were frying. Mum and Roger would be here soon, and later, Patrick with his family. The Christmas tree for the whole family had become our new tradition, which we followed with devotion despite the divorces and new marriages. Justin, I called, stirring the soup, do you remember you said your company was going to open a branch in Washington? Yeah, my brother replied from the room where he was finishing hanging the garland. Why? Did they offer you to head that area? Yes, they offered it to me. Justin appeared in the kitchen doorway, but I turned it down. Why? I looked at him in surprise. It's a promotion, more money, a prestigious position. I protested. Because my family is here, he replied simply. You, the kids, Mom. Why would I go to Washington? I smiled, feeling tears welling up. Justin, always so ambitious and determined, had given up professional growth for us, for this cozy house where he was waited for, loved and needed. Thank you, I said in a low voice. Thank you for all this. He came closer and took my hand. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. You, Roger, and Alice are the most valuable things I have. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Mum and Roger returned with the groceries, and behind them came Patrick, Lily, and little Sam. The apartment filled with voices, laughter, the smells of delicious food, and the aroma of pine. Alice excitedly hugged her little brother. Roger enthusiastically told his dad about his plans to go to architecture school. Mum helped in the kitchen, working with me on dinner. Justin and I watched this idyllic scene from a corner. We have a weird family, he whispered, but a happy one. Yes, I nodded, maybe not the one we dreamed of, but definitely a happy one. At the holiday table, when everyone was seated and the glasses were filled with champagne and the kids with lemonade, Justin unexpectedly stood up and tapped his glass with a fork. I want to make a toast. Everyone fell silent and looked at him. Justin was never a master of public speaking, preferring to stay in the shadows, but his eyes were shining with determination. In these 3 years, we have been through a lot, he began. There have been losses and disappointments, mistakes and their consequences. But now, looking at all of you, I understand that the trials make us stronger. We have learned to forgive, to accept life as it is, and to find happiness in simple things. He raised his glass. I want to toast to the truth, to that truth that a little girl with a phone in her hand once revealed to us. The bitter truth that first destroyed our lives, but then allowed us to build a new one, better than the old one. To the honesty that we sometimes lack so much, and to Alice, whose childlike sincerity changed all our destinies. The adults stood up with their glasses. Alice looked down shyly, but I saw her smile. To the truth, Mum repeated, followed by everyone else. And to forgiveness, Patrick added, looking at me, without which the truth has no meaning. I raised my glass, feeling a comforting warmth. Yes, life didn't go as I had planned. There was betrayal and pain, tears and sleepless nights, but now looking at this strange, imperfect, but so loving family, I knew I wouldn't trade this life for any other. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the city in a white blanket, but in our house there was warmth and comfort. In that moment, I felt that I had finally found true happiness. Not the euphoric happiness of youth, but a calm and deep one. The happiness of a mature woman who has known the bitterness of loss and the sweetness of new beginnings. My daughter, the one who destroyed my world with a video, helped me build a new one, more honest and stronger, and I was infinitely grateful to her for that. After dinner, when the guests dispersed into the rooms with cups of tea and plates of cake, Alice came up to me. "Mum, you know what I wished for with the rooster?" "No," I smiled. "Wishes aren't told, or they don't come true." "But mine already did," my daughter said seriously. "I wished that everyone would be happy. You, Uncle Justin, Roger, Dad, Grandma, and look, everyone is smiling. So it came true, right?" I hugged my daughter, holding her tight against me. At 11 years old, she was still as perceptive and wise for her age as she had been when she was 8, when she wasn't afraid to tell the truth. "It did, sweetie," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Your wish came true. We are all happy." "Ja, oit city is so ite,"